I suppose the reason we made these modules originally was because there were a couple of rival companies, weren't there, that were actually making clones of them.
Yeah.
And because we know Robin Wood at EMS, we didn't want to make them illegally as such, like these other companies were doing. But of course, to keep up with competition, we wanted to have them made. So I went to Robin and he kindly gave us permission to make exact copies of the EMS circuits from the Synthi A and VCS3, which these are, the exact replicas of the circuits, which was nice because it meant that we could have that claim. Of course, none of the others can, and they've simulated in their way these circuits. And these circuits originally were designed by David Cockrell for the original synthesizers, and they're very eccentric, very quirky, and they don't really follow conventional electronics in what would be looked upon now. But they do both create unique sounds in their way because of the way that Dave Cockrell came at what was given to him as a design exercise at the time. So they are very useful additions to a synthesizer that are... there's nothing out there in the market quite like the trapezoid shaper from an EMS, and it's great to be able to have this as one of our modules.
Yes.
You know, it's totally different to an ADSR type with its A on, D off, but it also incorporates its own VCA, inverter, a voltage control function.
Again, on the website, there's a patch called From Putney's Love, where the trapezoid is controlling filter and obviously the RS95E, so it's an EMS type of patch, and it really shows the quirkiness of the trapezoid circuits in its self-repeating mode.
I mean, two of the main module parts of a Synthi A that give it its sound is the filter and the trapezoid, and if we could now build an RS15 case with about 15 modules in it and pretty much simulate very accurately an original EMS synthesizer sound with a meter included, all the modules, the joystick, 3 VCOs, etc., 2 VCAs.
Linked in them with the RS450, you become into KS.
Yeah, you then have an AKS,
yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you simulate a Synthi A and VCS3 next to one of our cases, you will be able to emulate identical sounds. Obviously the Synthi patches very differently, and people love it for what it is.
And probably the spring reverb might influence the sound.
Yeah,
slightly, but if they're in dry modes.
Well, with the reverb unit in there, you're going to get very close.
Yeah.
I think you'll get so close that people standing facing the other way would have to really think as to what they're listening to.
Yeah.
All right, if you knock air case, it's not going to feed back, but things like that.
Yeah.
And maybe ours doesn't distort so much or distorts differently.
Yeah.
But that's the problem nowadays, you see, with like Robin's still building Synthis, but he can't get the original spring reverbs. The ones he gets are bigger, so he has to use different speakers which sound different. Nothing remains the same. So that is part of the game we're playing. It is analog, and that's all you can say about it. But yeah, I'm very glad that we've got the trapezoid and the filter module. And no two will be identical.
Yeah.
No, they won't be. They'll have slightly different decay times, different on times. It's the matching of the FET transistors that are in there. They're critical to the way the circuit was built by David Cockrell. You will never get two exactly the same. All you can get is two that are in the right parameters of percentage that are needed. Yes, it all adds to the uniqueness of what it is. A lot of my early design work was done for EMS with the hope and intent of bringing out new machines and new modules and things, which we never did. So a great deal of the circuitry that's behind our modules was originally intended and hoped to be in an EMS. Like the update to the Synthi A, the wave shaping circuitry that was used to emulate those EMS modules at the time is what's in our RS95s. And that's why the waveforms look very similar. All I did was separate and split the voltage control of the shape so that you can simultaneously, independently control both the triangle to saw and the square to pulse. I don't know of another oscillator that actually does that. You could have two separate CVs creating very complex waveforms. I mean, at the very best, normally, they will sweep the triangle to saw and the square to pulse at the same time, but not independently. It was another EMS throwback in terms of design, I suppose.
And by the time it got to the E, then you could even shape or voltage control the sine.
We added the sine wave, added
yeah.
the dial just to bring it up. It had, I think, 3 updates. It was 90, 95, 95E.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the 95 had no sine wave. It was just a pot on the frequency. It worked, but we added to it. And we changed the sync, just out of curiosity, didn't we? We had a soft sync on the early ones and went for a harder sync on the later ones. So yes, there are differences between early VCOs and later ones, if you want the full history of it. But it's a discrete oscillator. See, it's not like a Curtis oscillator or something, which means that the sync can have the depth on it. Because of course the Curtis, any of the chip-based oscillators were restricted by the fact that you only had soft or hard sync as a switch. You couldn't put a pot on it and vary it, which you could do on ours. The filter is certainly the weakest sounding filter in terms of richness, but it has very strange quirks of its own that it performs when being used that a lot of people love, and they want the effects that it produces. It's like as you sweep the frequency down at a given resonance position, the resonance actually varies its depth depending on where you are in the frequency range.
And you incorporated as well on the filter the pre-1974...
Yeah, the updates, and the changes that were made, yeah. Again, it was David Cockrell's design, which I think he obtained from another company at the time, and left off a part of the circuit, which was realised a year or two later, that they then modified. So you had pre-74, I think it was, and post-74 versions of 18 and 24 dB versions. That switch is on our module, so you can emulate both the early and later types. And also there was a capacitor fitted to the CV input which added a slew rate to the control volts that was put in. This was to reduce the click effect that you often got from sharp pulses going in, but slowed down the ability to create a percussive sound. So again, by switching that, you can create both effects, a sharp percussive effect or a slewed effect.
And also you added voltage control resonance,
which
was on the original circuit board.
That's right.
But didn't make it to the matrix.
Yeah, it was built in to be a voltage controlled resonance, but I don't think there was room on the original Synthi, so it was hardly any more than just putting the socket on, and the module does it. So I think it covers all the possibilities that the Synthi filter did have in the module.
So you can have pre-74 and post.
Yeah. I don't think there's any other variations of EMS Synthi filter that isn't on those simple that panel.